Yuma, and welcome to the Adventures of Russell the Canberra series. In this episode we're checking out the Canberra Bus Shelter. Canberrans have been using public transport since 1923, with the first bus shelters being mostly made of wood. Their floors were often wood, tiled, or made of concrete, depending on their location and the availability of resources. Today, only 12 now exist. In the 1920s, the bus routes only had to service a population of 6,000 people, but by the 1970s, the population had grown to about 200,000. This meant more bus stops and more bus routes. Gough Whitlam was Prime Minister, and he wanted to decentralise major cities to reduce overcrowding and traffic congestion. Canberra became his experiment, with major investment in schools, infrastructure and public transport. Satellite suburbs like Woden and Belconnen got a major boost, and the Australian Capital Territory Internal Omnibus Network, or ACTION, was part of the plan. To design the new bus shelters, the National Capital Development Commission hired Clem Cummings. Cummings was born in Cairns in 1934. In 1953, he moved to Canberra to study at the Royal Military College at Duntroon. He graduated in 1955 and resigned his commission 2 years later. In 1962, he graduated from the University of Sydney with honours in architecture. Returning to Canberra to work at the Department of Works, he eventually assisted the Prime Minister's office in 1968 as an advisor on several office refurbishment projects. He left the public service in 1971 to briefly work for the private architectural firm Dirk-Bolt Architects and Town Planners, before setting up his own practice, C.G. Cummings and Associates, the same year. Before working with the NCDC, Cummings had worked with the National Trust, the AST Heritage Committee and the New South Wales Heritage Council. As a matter of principle, his firm didn't nominate for awards. However, he did win the Housing Industry Award in 1978 for a house in Garran. However, this isn't his most iconic work. Cummings spent 3 years coming up with a design that would meet the standards set by the NCDC. In 1975, they cost $2,300 each to produce. But in today's money, that's equivalent to almost $17,000. Made from concrete and fiberglass, they're reflective of the brutalist architectural style. The Department of Capital Territories installed 98 of them around Canberra in May 1975. However, by 1976, the price had risen to $2,800 per shelter. At one stage, the Departmental Coordinating Committee believed the cost was just too high and wanted to reduce it down to $1,000. In response, the Transport Branch Assistant Secretary predicted that it would be a steel frame with a tin covering and would leave it as fair game for the Vandals of the city. Though functional and generally well received, the Department of Construction wanted a modified design. And in December 1976, 52 Series 2 bus shelters were installed, adding a precast floor, removing the backrest from all shelters and the seats from shelters near schools. This dropped the price to around $2,000. The original plans were thought lost until 2016, when the Territory Municipal Services Record Manager discovered a complete set at the Tuggeranong Action Depot. Over the next 3 years, the Transport Branch installed another 155 shelters, making Series 3 through to Series 5. Installations became less common by the 80s and 90s. Today the shelters are windowless, but originally they had panes made out of a polycarbonate called Lexan. Sadly though, vandals would often push them through or burn them. The practice was so common that it became too expensive to replace them. The Transport Branch even tried an alternative, stronger polycarbonate, Lexan 4000, but it too failed to stop the vandals. At one point they even tried to use wired glass, but abandoned the idea after glaziers warned them of how dangerous it would be if they shattered. In 1982, bus driver Brian Cousins had grown tired of the beige shelters, so he pitched the idea to have them decorated with art by local organisations and schools. Action Management agreed to this idea in the hopes that it would reduce graffiti, with the first shelters near Canberra and Enlighten High being painted by the students. Unfortunately, the artwork has long been painted over and lost to the sands of time, so if you have any photos or records of these paintings, please let me know. By 1987, Action expanded the program into a competition. At the launch, the member of Canberra, Ros Kelly, The first federal MP to give birth while in office said it was an innovative way to promote civic pride among students and members of the community. Monotone Paints sponsored the event, supplying paints and brushes as well as a $1,000 cash prize. Action also offered $330 worth of bus hire. If you want to see some of the designs, I have a link to the ACT archives in the description below. Unfortunately, in 1993, the competition came to an end, as Monotone was taken over by Amazing Paints. In the past few years, the shelters have had a bit of a resurgence. No longer a canvas, the shelters themselves are now inspiring art. The artist most associated with bus shelter art is Newcastle artist Trevor Dickinson. While in Canberra for work in 2012, he saw one of the shelters across from his studio, and he drew it. Over 8 years, he drew several artworks, photographed them all, and had an exhibition at the Canberra Museum and Art Gallery, and published a book featuring his art and the history of the shelters. In May 2019, he painted his first mural in Canberra, on the side of the Bavarian in Woden. This is not the only piece of shelter art in Woden, with the Silver Sprayers creating this artwork in December 2018 as part of the Streetwise project. It was created by Canberrans over the age of 55 with the aim of changing perceptions around mature Australians and street art. Due to their durability, some shelters are relocated to more suitable locations, with 11 finding new homes in January 2021. At the same time, solar panels and lighting were added to a couple of shelters in Mitchell to improve their safety at night. Though very common in Canberra, the bus shelter has been spotted around the country, in Maitland, Burradoo Station, and at one point as a set of public toilets in Surfers Paradise. The shelters have become so popular they even have their own merchandise, including socks. The Canberra Bus Shelter is so ubiquitous it's not going to be heritage listed anytime soon, but fortunately it has reached iconic status. If you've enjoyed this video, feel free to like, comment and share, and if you want to see more, hit that subscribe button.